Well, my mother has passed away. It's been a couple of days now, but she's at home in heaven with no more fears, no more worries, no more struggles. And we as a family are absolutely happy for her. I don't really know exactly what to say, in what order in this video. I may stumble over myself a little bit, but I want to make sure that you, the viewer, know that I'm not making this video to elicit sympathy. I know I'll probably get some sympathy because many of you have experienced this before. This is something we all go through eventually. So because you understand what it feels like, I'm sure that a few of you will have some things to say, and I'll be ever so thankful for them. But that's not why I'm making this video. I'm not even sure I know completely why I'm making it. But at the forefront of my mind, I guess what I'm thinking to myself is that this might help somebody else out there to realize that we all get through this, right? And maybe there are individuals out there who have never experienced this, and they might wonder what it's like. Or maybe they don't take it seriously and never really think about it because it seems so far out there. It's beyond the horizon. And all too often, it's proven that it's not. Time goes by so quickly. My mother was 79 years old. Next month, she would have been 80. I remember when she turned 35, when she turned 40. And I remember giving her a hard time about it, trying to make her feel old. That's what kids do. I remember her telling me to shut up about it. But I say that because I'm older than that now. And it seems like it went by so quick. I'm glad that my mother had eternity pinned down, that she was sure of where she was going, and for the right reasons. Not because of anything that she has ever done, but because of what Christ has done for her. I could say a lot of things. I've got to be careful because I want to make sure that people don't misunderstand me and think worse of what I'm saying than what I intend. I love my mother. We've had a turbulent relationship for many years, but never one that was completely severed. She softened as she got older, and I probably did too. I have good memories, and I have bad memories. I could say that about my father. I was closer to my father than I was my mother. And I was never a mama's boy. So, I don't struggle like that. But she taught us a lot. Growing up, she was a very, I would say more or less a stern mother, a disciplinarian. And it wasn't always easy. Sometimes I thought it was too hard. Even looking back, I thought some things were too hard. But one thing I can say for sure is I know that my mother always loved us. And I'm sure she was always doing what she thought was best at the time. Why do I bring that up? Because there's many of you out there who probably hold grudges against your parents, even in their old age. You look back and you think to yourself, they should have been there for me. They should have done this. They should have stepped in the way. Why didn't they do this more and less of that? And you might be harboring grudges that are keeping you from a lot of regret later on. I know I had a lot of negative feelings about my parents there for a while in my early adulthood, even into mid-adulthood, and I struggled with them. And then one day I read a book by Michael Jordan, the great basketball player of the Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan. I don't even know if I have that book anymore, and I wish I could find the quote that he gave in his book about your parents. But he was talking about how you need to give your parents a break. They probably did the best they could with what they had and with what they knew at the time. I never thought about it quite like that, because in my way of thinking, it was, no, I'm sure you didn't do the best you could. I'm sure you knew better and you just didn't. Well, I don't necessarily think that way anymore. And I couldn't find the quote by Michael Jordan, even online, but I did find another one by him. And I like this. I'm going to share it with you, and I'll tell you why I'm giving it to you. He said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that's why I succeed." He was trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed many times. It's kind of how our parents are, aren't they? You know how I know that? Because I'm a parent. And my kids think that I fail a lot. Heck, I think I fail a lot. But regardless of how things appear, I can assure you that I always think that I'm doing my level best. My kids still at this age don't understand that. Even at this age, they hold every little thing against me. Just like I did with my parents there for a while. But when I read that quote, not that quote I just gave you, but the other one I wish I could provide for you. When I read what he was saying, that's when it changed my mind. It's like in baseball. We always remember the great hits. We always remember the home runs. Well, if you're into that kind of thing. People can quote when they were made, who they were playing with, what inning it occurred in, how much they were up or down. But when a batter goes up to the plate, they miss more often than they hit. And that's how being a parent is. If you've been struggling with all sorts of negative feelings about your parents, what I want to tell you is put them aside. I'm not saying you have to get close to them, and I'm not saying this necessarily applies to everybody. But don't let that take up more space in your head. Live your life to the best of your ability, but continue to be kind. Keep your distance if you need to. But try to be a little understanding. Try to be a little less hateful. It's tough. It's a tough life. My mom was born on April 18th, 1945. That was a pivotal years, guys. A pivotal year. I can't really talk right. 1945, April 18th. The Third Reich was coming to the end. And 12 days later, after my mom was born, Adolf Hitler took his life, as it is reported. I know there's all sorts of thoughts about that, but that's what we seem to know, right? And it was a big deal. It was a very big deal. It was a different generation. But my mom was just born. My father was born the year before, but her parents, that generation, and the generations previous to them were tough. They were different than us. They were dealing with way different things. Life was a lot harder. They thought differently. They expected different things. In a lot of ways, they worked harder. Life looked different. And so I tried to understand that. And my mom didn't really, I wouldn't say she had a great childhood. I don't know a lot about it, but I've heard some things. And my older brothers, they probably know more than I do. But, she had a lot of baggage. But I'll tell you what, one thing I can tell you about my mother is she was one of the hardest working people I've ever known in my life. I knew no matter how hard things got, between her and my father, they'd always find a way to provide. No one could hustle like my mom. And that's what she taught me. I'm ever so thankful for that. She always came through. Every time. I have a few memories of my mom that I really enjoy. Some that I don't, My mother wasn't the most nurturing person, but she did have times when she showed love, and it really touched my heart. But I remember when I was a little boy, when my mom would send us kids to bed, sometimes that's when she would go play the piano. And I always loved that. I always thought that was a great way to end the night, to lay in bed and listen to her play the piano. I remember her kissing us goodnight. I remember her teaching us how to apply ourselves in different situations in life in order to get the most out of any given circumstance. I know that sounds kind of vague. It would just be too long to elaborate on. And I tell you what, she did teach us to work hard. She really did. I remember the first time I was bold enough to talk back to my mother. I had snuck out. She had told me to clean my room, and I hated cleaning my room. I couldn't go outside to play until I did. But I snuck out the window of my bedroom. I went out in the monkey bars in the backyard. She opened the window, leaned out of it, and she yelled at me. She goes, "David Gregory, I thought I told you that you couldn't go outside until you cleaned your room." And I said, "Shut up, Mom." It's the worst thing I could have ever done. I mean, my life might as well have ended then. She just slammed the window shut, and I could hear her feet pounding through the house. And she marched on out there, and I got the whipping of my life, which I probably deserved. I got quite a few of them growing up. Quite a few of them. And I don't remember ever doing that again. She had a way of making a point, making it quick, and making it stick. You didn't want to mess with my mom. No, you did not. I think I got my temper from her. She tended to be kind of an angry person, quick-tempered. My dad was a little more soft-spoken. I wouldn't say he was even-tempered. But my mom, I think I got that from my mother. And I've tried to curb it over the years because as I've gotten older, I've seen things in myself. I'm like, oh, I think I see my mother in myself. But, I look back on that now, and I'm beginning to understand why my mother was the way she was. And I can honestly say that given all of that, I believe that she did the best she could. I'm lucky enough to be able to say that I know that she was proud of me. I didn't feel like that when I was younger. I didn't feel like that at all. I guess when you have a number of children, the attention gets spread out you know. Her and I butted heads a lot. And I never really felt like she was proud of me too much until I started getting really good at the piano. And then occasionally she'd want me to show off for somebody, which I thought was kind of weird, given that we didn't have that much of a relationship at the point. But I thought, okay, I'll take it. That's kind of cool. It didn't change things a whole lot. But then I had my kids, and I wouldn't say, but really in all of it, it's just been over the past several years. I felt like she's really proud of me. She's very supportive of my YouTube channel. She watches my videos. I don't know if she watches all of them, but she does watch them. She tells me how much she likes them. She even gives me constructive criticism. Not really criticism. She gives me constructive suggestions. I wouldn't say it's criticism. She's even given me some suggestions, which I have taken. But I love that. And while I didn't agree with all of her decisions, I'm going back to what I've been saying over and over again. I really do believe over time that she did the best she could. And I hope that you can forgive your parents if you feel negative about them. I hope that you can be adult enough to just lay some things aside. And it's important that you do, because you may need your children to do the same thing someday for you. You might hope that they will. I know that, my mother had been depressed for a while leading up to her death. I mean, it's hard to deal with having cancer. She had metastatic colon cancer. We thought my mom was such a strong individual, we thought she was going to live to be well over 100. And that's no joke. Like, maybe it's wishful thinking, but we just thought, I didn't really wish one way or the other what age she lived to, but I really just legitimately thought, because my mother's so active, and she comes from good German stock, and some of her relatives lived well into their 90s, and she was so active. I just thought it's a given. This woman is never going to die. And so her getting cancer just blew us out of the water. And by the time they found out, it's just too late. Just too late. But I'm thankful that she had family there with her in her last hours. I don't know if she expected that. I don't know. But we were there. A couple of us just couldn't be. But I know she felt loved. I'd gone up there, and I actually stayed 2 days longer than I thought I was going. I stayed 2 days longer just to make sure. I'm really glad I did. They determined, each day she physically degraded. She was somewhat responsive when I arrived. She could look at you, she could try to talk, and it was just, the words are coming out of her mouth, there was no sound, but you could understand what she was saying. And I would joke with her. That's one thing her and I could do. We could joke with each other. We were very sarcastic with each other. Always ribbing each other. We had that. And I did that with her when I was in there, and she'd do it right back to me. As able as she was, as much as she was able to. So we laughed about it. She had this way of rolling her eyes at me, like, oh, brother, And even other people in the room were getting a kick out of it, because even in her condition, she could convey her sarcasm where I was concerned. And I even told the others, I said, yeah, I've always had this way of making my mother roll her eyes. But it was all in good humor. It was all in fun. I tried to make things as light as possible for her, bring some levity to the situation. But the second day rolled around that I was there, and she was a little less able to do that. the third day, it was getting more grim. And by the time she got put into hospice, she was only in there a matter of hours, and we just thought it might be a matter of days, right? So we, it was late. It was getting around 9 o'clock, I think it was, 9 o'clock in the evening. And I think that was Friday night, if I can keep it straight in my head. Anyway, it was around 9 o'clock in the evening, and my niece's boyfriend plays in a band, and he's real musically inclined. Anyway, he's a real good musician, and him and a guy were going to be playing at this kind of upscale club. I don't know what you'd call it. This really nice venue. And so she was like, hey, would you want to go? We were all like, yeah, let's go. We needed a break. So my mom had just been, entered into hospice and everything. And like I said, she was hardly responsive. And before we left, we each one said goodbye to Mom. And believe it or not, every one of us got a smile out of her. And when I leaned over and said goodbye to Mom, her eyes widened and she gave me this smile, which was more than we were able to get out of her all day long. And we were very surprised by this. And the way she did it, it was a different kind of look and a different kind of smile she gave each and every one of us. We left. I told Mom, I said, Mom, I'll be back in just a little bit. I ran my fingers through her hair, kind of rubbed her head. I could tell she liked that. I can't remember if I kissed her or not. I just can't remember. I don't know if it matters, but others, I know others did. We walked out, went to this place. We're entertained. I walked back to my hotel because I was fairly close. As soon as I get in there, my sister calls me and she says, Greg, you need to get to the hospital. Mom just passed away. All right. So I did. And now I'm convinced that, well, I don't know if I'm convinced. I speculate strongly that Mom was just waiting for us to leave. She passed away at 12:45 a.m. And I suspect that the response that she gave us was her way of saying goodbye. In fact, in the last months of her life, my brothers and I would try to reach out to her. She would normally send us Marco Polo videos, which is an app where you can send one-way video messages. It's kind of like FaceTime, but it's not, because it's not two-way, it's just one-way. And my mom stopped sending those videos to us. She stopped responding to our texts. It's kind of like when an animal is about to die and they skitter off out into the woods or wherever, they go away. And that's what we felt like our mother was doing. And we couldn't get her to respond. Every once in a while she would text us good morning, and I would respond to her the same way, and then I'd never hear anything back. But we got that out of her at the very end. Hospice was shocked that she went that fast. Well, I knew she didn't want to be here. She didn't want to be here. I'm glad she went as quickly as she did. Unfortunately, hospice was not in the room when she passed away. They were checking up on her like they should, but it just caught them by surprise. I just hope she didn't struggle. I don't know. I wish we would have been there, but I don't know that it would have made any difference. But I do feel like my mom did say goodbye to us. But life goes on. And I did tell my mom, I was the first one back up to the room when we got called back up there. And I assume my mother is just, I know my mother's in heaven, but I'm assuming that she's not like lingering over her body. You hear about these near-death experiences. But then again, I don't know. How much do we really know, right? And I just told my mom, I'm sorry you had to go through this. I'm sorry you had to go through this. I told her I want her and Dad to leave the light on for me. I stayed around for the rest of that day, made sure arrangements were taken care of. My niece and nephew were taken care of as much as we could possibly help them. I stayed the night with my nephew. I stayed in my mother's bed, which I didn't really want to do. I thought it felt kind of strange. I made sure I went out that night and was as busy as possible so that I would be out like a light as soon as my head hit the pillow, and I was. And it was weird being in my mother's room because her stuff was in there, her hats, her cute hats that she would wear. Her ledgers were in there, where she kept her financial records. My mom was always very neat and tidy and orderly. Sitting in that room, looking around, it looked just like she just walked out and went to the kitchen. But yeah, that's been my experience. I will tell you though, you do get through it. It is the natural order of things. It seems like, the parents should always go before the children. You hope, at least, right? I mean, I don't want to outlive my children, and I am thankful that it's not one of my children. I talked to a lady just today who told me that she lost her son, and it feels just like yesterday. And I asked her how long ago it was, and she said 22 years ago. And he had taken his own life. I'm glad that I don't experience that, or haven't experienced that. I have things to be thankful for. And there are wonderful things that do come out of this. People did have positive attitude. Our family did have positive attitudes walking away from all of it. And I'm sure we'll struggle with some feelings and some emotions and thoughts as the days roll on. But we get through it. We get through it. And you will too. You can't avoid it. You can't avoid it. My suggestion is try to find the bright side of things. Pay attention to that. Don't hold on to negative feelings. Continue to be kind, gracious, and forgiving as much as you possibly can. Doesn't mean you always have to draw close, but understand that while you may not agree with everything, those people just might be doing their very best. We might want to take that into consideration. All right, guys. I thank you for listening. I'll see you on the next one.